All right, welcome back. So, as a review, last time we downloaded and installed Python. We have opened Idle, which is Python's built-in integrated development environment, IDE. We kind of went over the basics of Idle, and we copied and saved some example code. So what we're going to be going over today is kind of how Python reads our code. We're going to play as the interpreter, and I kind of made a logic map that kind of explains the Python interpreter. So we're going to start over here with the code that we copied and pasted yesterday. And we're going to play as the Python interpreter, or I am, but you should play along, I guess. So the Python interpreter reads from top to bottom, left to right, just like you would read a book. And essentially what's happening here is it's going to start with each line. It's going to go line by line, running each code, right? Do. It's going to follow the logic that we wrote down. So this first line here, so something we can do in Python is we can add comments, right? Comments are pieces of text that are not run by the interpreter. And we can do so in our code by putting the number sign, the pound sign, hashtag, whatever you want to call it. And then we can type some text here and it won't run that text. That will just be a comment. So I'm going to add comments here as we go along to explain what we're going to do. Also have an updated version of the code with comments so you can start to understand what's happening in our code. So yeah, this first line here, we are importing a library, right? Or a module from the Python standard library, right? We're going to get more into that next time, but it will make more sense as we go on and as you start using it more. But essentially think of a module for now as a collection of pre-made code, right, that you can use, right? And some of these come with Python, some of them are online stuff that you can download, but we'll get into all that in the future. So this imports random, which means it's imports a module called random. So a collection of pre-made code. This next line here, we are creating a variable called winners, and we're setting it equal to the list with the numbers 6, 8, and 10, right? So we create variable and set it equal to a list of integers 8, 7, and 10. This next line, we call our module, we start using it, right? This is called a function, and so we're calling the rand int, which stands for random integer function. That's part of this module up here, right? That's why it has the random.rand int, but again, we'll get more into that. So we're creating a variable called num, standing for number, and set it equal to a function's output, or this function's output. This next line is called an if statement, which again we'll go more and more into as we get on here. Particularly, this is called an if-else statement, this whole block right here. What this is essentially saying is if our random number is greater than 5 and in the list winners, then it's gonna print hooray, which I spelled wrong, and it's gonna print the number. If the number, right, if this random number that's chosen is not greater than 5 and or it's not in the list, then it's going to print this stuff instead. It's going to print not so great and still print the number. All right. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to add more here, probably get a little more detail with the comments so you guys can go through them. Add your own comments as you start learning things, as I explain things, so you understand them in your terms, which will help you learn much better. So yeah, but that's kind of how Python reads our code, from top to bottom, left to right, right? We just played as the interpreter right there. So I'm going to show you now how Python, the interpreter works, how Python is, because it could get a little confusing with what the interpreter is as opposed to what Python actually is, right? So Python's the programming language that we're using, and there's a Python interpreter that kind of reads through this text and knows how to process it and knows how to spit the output that is typed here, right? So I went ahead and I made this map here. Starting in idle, right? So if we open up idle, the first thing we see is this shell here, right? This is the REPL, R-E-P-L. This is the REPL environment, right? And so the way the REPL environment works, see, if we follow this here, the way the REPL environment works is if I type some code and I hit enter, it immediately gives me back, it runs it through the Python interpreter, and it gives me an output. The text editing, which is down here, if I hit save, right? So if we open up a new file, or an old file, which I'm going to stick with this file, and we then save the file, which I just saved it. If we press F5 or the run button up here, run module, if we press F5, it runs it through the Python interpreter, and it spits out some output for us, right? Based on our code that we ran. So that's really it for this. I hope that kind of makes sense. If you got any questions, feel free to ask them. I'll do my best to answer them. But for now, I'll see you in the next one.